Hi there! You're about to listen to a vintage episode of the Under the Microscope podcast. While the content is still as relevant and as interesting as when it was recorded, our webpage has changed. You can now find us at thesciencetalk.com/real-scientist-nano. Welcome to Under the Microscope. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. Hi everyone, today we have with us Anna Piras, who is a PhD student at the Heidelberg Institute for Theoretical Studies in Germany. Hi Anna, how are you?
Hi, I'm very good, thanks.
Super, let's get started. So could you explain your research to us in super simple words, please?
Okay, so I'm a computational scientist. So I work mainly with, I just do simulation. I don't work with nanomaterials in real life, but what I do is simulate the interaction that materials can have with different molecules or compounds and try to understand how this interaction can then be exploited in electronics, in sensors, or in catalysis. So what I really want to do is try to find if there is a simple relationship that can be just a trend or a real quantitative relationship between something that we can compute, so not spending money for experiment, but just doing as easy as possible simulation on a computer, and the actual experimental performance of materials. In particular, I'm very interested in graphene and graphene derivative materials. So what I do is simulate various molecules on these materials and try to understand if that can actually say to us how to design new materials for real applications.
Okay. Wow. That's super interesting. I mean, the one thing that I really like what you mentioned is that I hadn't thought about it this way, that when you're doing the simulations before deciding where to invest the money. Instead of doing the experiments, doing all the work, you can do the simulations and see if it is worth doing it experimentally, right? Did I understand it correctly?
Yes, of course, to understand if our ideas work, we need first to check it on experiments. We can't say a priori oh, this works. But after that, in theory, if we found a good way to do it, then it can be not to say this material works, but to say this kind of material can work for this application better than these materials.
Okay. Wow. And the second thing I really liked, or I definitely relate to or find the connection here, is that you mentioned you work with graphene and the 2D materials. That's your focus, because my master and my PhD work was about graphene, and it's really close to my heart. So that's really cool. That's really interesting. What exactly do you study about graphene? Like you mentioned, its interactions with different molecules, right? Something like that?
Yes, I can, an example, I can simulate how strong different contaminants, like dangerous molecules or pollutants, interact with graphene to understand if the interaction is very strong, that means graphene can be used either to detect them or to filter them out of, I don't know, waste over water or to decontaminate something. And so you just simulate and you check oh, these molecules interact very well with graphene. That means graphene can be used for it. If the molecule does not interact, then simply you can say that the graphene probably won't work well with it.
Okay. Wow, let's talk more about that in the long podcast because I'm definitely interested in that part. I mean, already I'm convinced that you will have a lot to talk about when you're taking over the account. And speaking of which, what kind of followers expect in the week that you will take over the Real Scientist Nano Twitter account?
For the week of my creation of the account, I will start with a general introduction of myself and what I did like during the bachelor and the master and what did I study actually to become a computational chemist. Then I will explain a bit more about the PhD, like how did I find this PhD, what does the PhD job actually is, like what do I do normally, and I will also probably talk about what is a typical PhD, my typical PhD day, and how is the typical PhD day during lockdown, which is different. And then I know that a lot of people are not so familiar in computational chemistry or computational material science, so I will try to give an overview on that. And then I will try to talk about my main focus, which is graphene. Graphene is becoming super famous, super exploited, but it's an amazing field. There are a lot of fun facts, a lot of things to know. And I will do this for graphene and for other two-dimensional materials. And then I will talk about either how we can exploit computer simulation to help the research and where we can apply these materials. And that will end the week with like overview on the future of the field, so like what we think we can do with graphene and what we think we can do with this kind of computational chemistry, because everything is very new. Like graphene is not even 15 years old, so there is still so much to do. It's still a very young field.
Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot of amazing science planned for the week. So thank you very much. Looking forward to having you on Real Scientist Nano. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you. Can't wait to create the account.
Super.
Thank you for listening. To know more about us, please visit our website realscientistsnano.org and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.